Yesterday, we began a special two-part report on the potentially deadly conditions inside Texas prisons that impact the safety of guards and endanger prisoners. Today, Fiora Hernandez brings you part two.
Texas state law requires the ambient temperature in the sheltered part of the facility must not rise above 85 degrees Fahrenheit for more than 2 consecutive hours. But that law isn't for humans. It's for dogs and cats.
Do you know that the dog pounds even have air conditioner? But the state of Texas prisons don't.
Texas law does not require prisons to maintain specified temperatures, allowing interiors to exceed 110 degrees regularly, according to a July 2022 report by Texas A&M. That study noted one unit reached 149 degrees. Family members who have lost incarcerated loved ones are crying out.
We need desperate change, and we need it today, this hour, before the sun sets on our brow. This day, ladies and gentlemen, we need respite care in Texas Department of Criminal Justice. They're cooking our babies alive.
Creating a humane environment for prisoners and staff seems like the right thing to do. And last session, the Texas House agreed. They passed House Bill 1708, which would have established a temperature standard of 65 to 85 degrees and allocated $545 million in funding. State Representative Carl Sherman explains.
We actually appropriated over $500 million for us to have AC. And I can tell you what it has cost us in the past. When you look at the cost that we've expensed on trying to address lawsuits, it's been millions of dollars. And it's been less to actually install AC. Still,
despite a $32.7 billion budget surplus, both efforts died in the Senate, and the final budget allocated zero funds for prison air conditioning specifically.
You that are elected need to be responsible for making certain that the living conditions are above that of animal shelters for these inmates.
We have the resources, and we still have surplus, but there is not a will to provide AC in the housing units.
Some now cling on to the hope that Texas Governor Greg Abbott will call an emergency special session of the Texas legislature to address the issue. And that's exactly what State Representative Carl Sherman is calling on him to do.
You can be conservative, but also be a humanitarian. And let's declare an emergency right now, today.
This sounds like a common sense approach. But the Texas Department of Criminal Justice says, much like those Texans who do not have access to air conditioning in their homes, the department uses an array of measures to keep inmates safe. Family members of the deceased disagree.
There are some provisions that the Texas Department of Criminal Justice put into place. Cold water, cold showers, respite areas. But guess what, guys? There's not enough staff to implement those policies. The people in there are not getting the relief. What they need is climate control, and we're not talking about comfort. We are talking about a matter of life and death.
The hard data to prove it isn't available. Some say that's a matter of resources, while others say prison administrators aren't recording the data to avoid litigation. Either way, it's a controversial topic that even medical professionals remind us to keep in context.
I live in the state of California. There's about 30% of the residents in the state of California that don't have air conditioning. And we have heat waves that roll through California as well. And I feel bad for the prisoners, but they're prisoners. And so before we start spending more taxpayer dollars on taking care of prisoners in the state of Texas, and with all respect, I understand that it's hot and it's difficult for them, we need to put things in context as well.
And part of that context is to take responsibility, upholding the constitutional rights of all individuals against cruel and unusual punishment.
If we are paying our tax dollars to house individuals who have been incarcerated under the custody of the state, and they're in conditions that are worse than our animal shelters, I think we're accountable for that.
Scripture says in Hebrews 13, remember those in prison as if you were together with them in prison, and those who are mistreated as if you yourself are suffering.
We know that our things shouldn't be more valued than those that are made in His image. whether you've done something wrong or whether you just didn't have a good legal team. Everyone deserves to be treated like a human.
So agree with me in prayer with prison ministries across the nation for our legislators, correctional officers, prisoners, and their families. Reporting for Victory News, I'm Fiora Hernandez.
Before we go, let's talk with Victory News contributor Luke Ball once again. Luke, Texas law requires climate control for county jails and animal shelters, but not for state prisons, affecting tens of thousands of inmates and their families. Question to you, is this cruel and unusual or a smart way to save taxpayer dollars?
Well, Fiora was right. This is a constitutional question. It goes back to the 8th Amendment. This is a situation where even if you just remove the humanitarian thought of it, it is a constitutional concern. Yes, they are prisoners. We don't expect this to be a resort, but we also don't want to treat them below animals. And I especially appreciate highlighting the human value and leaning on Scripture because, look, these folks are probably at the bottom pit of their life. This is an opportunity to show a little bit of compassion, in my opinion, and then go into those prisons. It's not something that we could just be completely removed of. There are prison ministries where folks are going into these institutions as Christians and ministering to them at the lowest points of their lives. The fields are ripe for harvest in these prisons and these situations. And I think one of the least things we can do is create a condition where they are treated as humans and not animals as we share the gospel with them.
All right, good point, Luke. There aren't many conservatives who speak out on criminal justice reform. Now, you're a political strategist. Are they missing an opportunity with voters when they stay silent on this topic?
Well, one of the main reasons that they don't highlight this is because they'll be attacked on being soft on crime. They'll be primaried from somebody on the right, which is why I suspect that a lot of these bills and ideas died in the Texas Senate and died in legislatures across the country because Texas is not the only place where this is an issue. So from a political standpoint, they will be attacked because they want to have other folks who are primarying them. They'll be said that they're soft on crime, but I think it is something that needs to have a second look. President Trump did a fantastic job looking at criminal justice reform when he was president of the United States. He's been attacked on that, but it's something that we shouldn't abandon.
Yeah, he did do that. And to be fair, some of these prisons in the United States, they need new prisons. I mean, some of these are very, very old, and they haven't been refurbished. They were built long before air conditioning was available.
And the guards, as you guys mentioned before, too, it's not just the prisoners, it's the state employees who are put at risk as well.
It is. Luke Ball, thank you so much for being with us today and the expertise that you always bring to Victory News.
Thanks, Greg.